Hello YouTube pipers, hope everybody's doing okay. I am going to pour out some Granger to put in my Rossi Rubino Antico. I'm sorry, I got hypnotized by tobacco going into this. Hope everybody's doing all right. I once again don't really have anything to say. I just wanted to smoke a pipe and join you guys, or you guys join me and maybe have a pipe with me. That's the thing about smoking a pipe. Not too many people around just smoke pipes. So, about the only time I do it anymore is whenever I'm sitting in front of y'all. Got to open the window. Something to keep that curtain back. I watched Smarty Bob's post this morning, and he gave me a shout out about his bicycle being an American Flyer. Which the picture he showed was pretty nice. So, it was my intention to find a picture of my maroon Raleigh. Now, I went through a bunch of pictures. Looking for a Raleigh bicycle that was somewhat like the one I had. And the framework I could find without the saddle seat that I had. If I found a saddle seat, it was a two-tone, whereas mine was tan. If I found a frame and a saddle seat, there was no light on the front with the generator at the bottom. And if I found one that looked almost like mine did, it was green or some other color. But I never could find one like he found a beautiful picture of his American Flyer. And I'm not sure if Raleigh went out of business way back when or what, but I never could find a good, decent picture that I could hold up in front of you, because I haven't figured this editing thing out yet, and it's going to take me a while. So I'm sorry I can't show you one. I wish I could. My buddy had a paper route, and I would always go up there and help him fold the papers and get them ready for his. He had a wooden T, a piece of wood that went across, and two pieces that went down, and the one bar that went across he would put between his handlebars, and then he would have the two pieces sticking out, which he would put a canvas sack with all his papers in that. And once we got them all rolled up, we put them in that, and then we go down go down the road where his customers lived, and he would toss them onto the porches. He was pretty good at that. He always said the worst thing was collecting. People didn't want to pay him. Yeah. But getting back to the Raleigh bike, I'll keep looking. Maybe one day I'll find a picture of it. They had one that was similar, but not completely like it. It had a different seat, and handlebars were different. They had these racing handlebars that come up and under. Hate those. They wanted $1,200 for that, and then you had to pick it up in person. They wouldn't ship it. Well, enough about that Raleigh. You know, when I first started buying stuff, pipes and tobacco, I bought this because I thought that was just too cool. I mean, back in revolutionary times in the 18th century, those people were always smoking these in these little ends, and they would break the end off and toss it for the next person to smoke it. Well, I thought that was just neat. And it didn't cost that much, and whenever I got it here and I stuck it in my mouth, it stuck to my lips. And that clay got all over my lips and just couldn't stand it. So I have yet to smoke that. I've considered putting some acrylic paint on this, and maybe that would keep that clay from whatever it does to your lips. It sticks on there, just feels yuck. So I'll give that a try one day. But some people have said that you can truly taste tobacco in this. And that would be something. Looks like tobacco would come right through it because it's a mighty big hole down there. And it is a long conical shape. So that the closer it gets to your mouth, the faster the smoke would travel. I don't know whether the distance would cool it down or what, but I'm going to have to try it. Gonna have to try it. I've been talking about my dad on occasion, and one thing about him is if any of my friends were in trouble, like if I had a couple of friends, they were kicked out of their house. For what, I don't know. I never asked them. But they would always come here, and Dad would talk to them, and he would let them stay. He would make room for them. I know there were 3 of my friends Dad opened his doors for until their parents okayed their coming back. But my dad was a good man, and he always wanted to help anybody that was in trouble. And these guys, I mean, we were kids, we were teenagers. And whatever they had done, their parents had just gotten angry with them and said, "Get out of the house and don't come back." And after they had been here for a while, their parents would cool down and say, "Come on back." But they always knew they had a place to come to because my dad had an open door. He said, "Yeah, come on in." He had a good heart, my dad. I have a teapot over there that's made out of aluminum. When we came over, Mom and Dad brought it with them. I don't know how old it was when they had it over there, but I still have it. I still use it. And that was 1949 that we came over here. So that's like almost 75 years old now. Just the time it's been over here. I don't, like I say, I don't know how old it was before they packed it up. That teapot. It was kind of the center of the table. And when Mom would ask Dad, "Do you want me to put the kettle on?" He'd say, "Yeah, I could use a cup of tea." And she would make the tea. And he insisted that you had to take the kettle that was boiling to the pot, because you always poured in an amount of the boiling water and rinsed out the pot. Now, some people thought it was because you had to clean that pot for this bowl or this pot of tea, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was it had to heat the pot up to almost the same temperature as the water. You would pour that out, put in your tea bags, and then next time the kettle boils, you would take that pot over to the kettle because you wanted the boiling water to go over it, so that the kettle was hot from the rinse, and you would pour boiling water over the tea bags, so that all the heat went into the tea to draw the flavor out. And then you would put that under a tea cozy to keep it hot, and let it steep for about 3 to 5 minutes. And we always had milk in our tea, so we would pour the milk in the cup and then pour the tea over the milk. And I always thought it was because that stirred the milk. Now, I've seen other people who do it tea, then milk, and stir it. So I guess Dad had us eliminate that stirring portion, because that's the way we always did it. And then we would sit. He didn't say much, but sometimes he would talk over that cup of tea. Used to ask him about the war, but he never would talk about the war. But he would talk about things that happened aboard ship. Like when they had a gripe against the captain. He said, they would always say, "Alf, why don't you lead us up there and we'll be right behind you, and you can explain to him what the situation is." So my dad would agree to it, and they would walk up to go talk to the captain. And when the captain would say, "What you want?" my dad would say, and he'd look behind him and there was nobody behind him, so he would stand there by himself to explain whatever it was that they had wanted to talk about. But he would carry it out. I don't know whatever happened. He said he just always got upset about that because they never would stand behind him like they said they were going to. And he always talked about somebody on one of his ships and called him Blood Reed. And I always thought that is the coolest name, Blood Reed. I mean, it sounds like something out of a book. But I don't think he liked this Blood Reed too much. he worked down in the, he called it the double bottoms. He worked down in the boiler room. He was in charge of the men who were, I don't know if the ones he had were the coal, because I'm not sure they were using coal during the Second World War. It might have been oil. But he kept charge of that to keep the boilers running so the ship would keep moving. Chief Petty Officer. His captain had him take the test to see if he had what it took to be an officer. And he took the test and he said he thought it was easy. And after he took it, he crossed through everything and handed it in. And his captain called him to the office and said, "What did you do that for?" He said, "You passed you got everything right, and you could have been trained to be an officer. Now, why did you cross this out?" And my dad said, "I just joined up." He said, "I want to get out of this when the war is over. I don't want to die in this mob." So he passed up the chance to become an officer. He was a rebel. He was about 5'7" and solidly built. He wasn't as big a body frame as what's his name, Schwarzenegger. But if you've ever seen the Tarzan movies and you've seen Gordon Scott, who played Tarzan, that's about how my dad was built. He was a strong son of a gun. I saw him one day pick up the end of a car. I don't know, somebody had to do something under it, and he held it up while he did it. And then he put it back down. I mean, he was strong. There's a story about, I'll tell that another day, because it takes a little bit more time than I've got right now. But looking back on it is funny as hell. But at the time, it wasn't funny at all. It hurt. But like I say, he was 5'7", and he was a boxer on board. They had boxing matches on board the ships. And he boxed. And I think he said he won almost all his rounds in the same, what do you call it, same weight. I don't know, featherweight and all that kind of stuff. I think he was a featherweight, I'm not sure. He was also tough. They went out drinking. His friends always wanted him around because his motto was, "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." He was a tough little bugger. I almost lost him, though, when he was in the Navy before he met my mother. He got drunk somewhere and had to get back to the ship, and he had to take a train. And he had drunk so much that he had alcohol poisoning. Could have killed him. But he made it back to the ship. I think somebody carried him aboard. I'm very glad that he was still around. And he was a sharp dresser when he was young. Something my mother said about him, that he really dressed to the T's whenever he was going somewhere. I remember him. He had, I don't know if you've seen some old movies of British sailors in those white shorts, but he kept his uniform shorts, and he used to wear them during the summer when he was young, just out of the Navy. And he brought them to America, and I remember him wearing those. I was proud of him when I was young. A little frightened of him at times. He was a very strict man, but with good reason, because he wanted me to grow up. And these days, I don't know what it means to grow up to somebody, but to us it meant take on your adult what's the word that I'm struggling for here? Your adult responsibilities by the time you're 21 at least. Which I tried to do. I sometimes wondered if he was proud of me, because he never really said. He worked at the Charleston Rubber Company, where he worked in what they called the dip room, and they had the solution that they had forms for gloves made out of porcelain, or ceramic rather, because it was sealed, it wasn't porous at all. And they would have like 50 of those hanging from a rack, so that hands were pointed down, and you'd have to lower them at a certain speed so that air bubbles wouldn't form on the rubber on the hand as it went into the solution. So it had to be a specific rate, and that rubber was the rubber solution. It was like breathing in lighter fluid, I guess. The gases in that room, because they didn't wear masks back then. But I'm sure they do now because of all the safety features they have to go through. But he was in those gases, and breathing it straight into his lungs. And he let me go in with him one time at night when he was on the night shift. And within 10 minutes, I was drunk from those fumes. I mean, my mind was just drifting, and I was stumbling around. So he had me get out of the room. But he worked in that almost 8 hours a day. And I'm positive that contributed to the cancer he got, because he got bladder cancer toward the end of his days. And when I read up on it, it stated that earlier in life he could have breathed in toxic fumes, and I looked up to see what, I can't remember what it was, what the solution was that liquefied that rubber as it went down. But those were the chemicals that if you breathe in, and he breathed them in for, I know, 5 years, 8 hours a day. And I'm positive that contributed to it, because those chemicals concentrated in the bladder, because your bladder is what gets rid of the waste, and that was a waste. So that over the years, the concentration of that caused his bladder to contract cancer. It was sad. Sad. But anyway, y'all didn't want to hear that. Let me go. I didn't mean to end this on that kind of a note. Any suggestions other than painting the tip of this with an acrylic paint, maybe blue or red, to distinguish it from the end, so that when that acrylic dries, it would have a plastic coating on there so that clay wouldn't stick to my lips? Because I would really like to give that a shot and see if it's true that you can taste the tobacco better. It's Friday. So I hope that everybody has got some fun plans for the weekend. Just received word through the email that there's a possibility a hurricane may develop down in the Gulf and work its way up through Florida and over to our state. Not looking forward to that. Sometime during the week next week. But we'll see. It's a possibility it won't do it at all. All right. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for listening. Sometimes you just need to talk. And this is where I talk, in front of the glass. I hope you got plans. I hope they're good plans. I hope your weekend is a beautiful one. And I wish you the best until the next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.